Hey, this is Clay with Nanobot Rock. Greg and I are here to discuss local and independent music from around the world, amongst other things like beer cups and Wally Pip. Here it is, another episode of Nanobot Rock Mixtape.
So Clay, I've been thinking lately, which is always a dangerous thing, but remember back in the day when you could get the tapes or CDs by mail and you get the Columbia House or whatever it was and you get the order form you send off?
You too can have the entire Red Hot Chili Peppers collection for only a penny.
Right, like if you really wanted the Steely Dan discography, you could get that for like $1 and they'd send you like 30, and then by the time it was all said and done, you ended up owing Columbia House like 27 cents, and they were sending like 14-year-olds to collections all the time. But back in the day, you used to be able to mail it off. You get in the mail, you get all this great stuff. And I'm trying to think if there's a modern equivalent to that. And I know that we've gone digital with virtually everything. There's this conversation of, is digital going to destroy the physical medium and all of that? But there's this growing trend of these record of the month clubs. Basically, they're founded around this concept of curating musical taste to the subscriber and sending you a record a month for 3, 6, 12 months, whatever you sign up for. Is that the new Columbia House? Is it a fading trend? I mean, records are obviously on the upswing. That's more popular than they've been in a long time. But what are your thoughts? Do you think that this is just going to turn into another meme in 30 years where we end up owing Record of the Month Club 27 cents?
Well, I mean, I kind of have to think about it as like, how many people do you know that sort of Loot Crate or something like that, or Stitch Fix? You know, one of those things that already curates something to you, whether it's the geek box or your clothes. And Columbia House, at least back when we were doing this, and yeah, it was basically you got the entire discography of Led Zeppelin for a sandwich and a song, but then you ended up having to buy 6 albums that you had no interest in after that. But the whole thing was like, it was basically so accessible to everyone. I mean, it was in the back of every newspaper. That was the most exciting thing about the newspaper for me on Sunday was, let me get the Columbia House thing out and let me see all the different album pictures they have and all the different stickers I can put on the thing. And so it was like this broad idea that everyone could basically get their own music library. And I think you're going to run into the common folk who are just like, well, I can just get whatever I want off Spotify and I don't need to worry about having albums. But then you get into the whole audiophile club. And yeah, I think this is something that's really going to stick with them, especially now when you can't get into stores. It's great that you can just have the new Teal Dream magazine album shipped right to your door.
And to your point of the stores being closed, I mean, that is a good point. I don't see it as a opposition to the stores necessarily, or something that could eventually take the stores out of business, because you're really only getting maybe 1-2 records a month. I mean, it is a record of the month kind of thing, not records of the month sort of thing. And I did speak with Kyle Matheson, the owner of the Chicago-based Black Box Record Club, about this a while back, just because I was curious about what went into this and what made it tick. And Kyle explained to me that he built his business to meet a lot of the negative points that he saw with other services that were out there. And I feel like they're all starting to get into that similar trend of trying to fight those negative points. The negative points are just...
What are some of those negative points that you could run into with a record store, other than, say, surly guy at the counter who doesn't, think that you deserve to buy this Radiohead album?
Take your patchouli stank and get out of my store. A little high fidelity for somebody out there. But at the record store, no, there's not a lot of negative points per se. But these started to pop up around the same time that vinyl started to increase. And I think that Kyle was speaking more to the negative points from the other services of the record by mail. Because that you make a great point that at a record store, there isn't necessarily a negative point, because you can walk in and you could find pretty much whatever you want. If you don't find what you want, you can have it special ordered. You can go elsewhere. Ultimately, if it's just not in a store, now we do have at our fingertips the ability to get it online. But these, as you said, there's all sorts of curated, send it to you monthly sort of subscriptions that happen. And I think that there may be a lot of negatives to those, a lot of negative points. You had talked about Loot Crate and things like that, and I personally don't have experience with Loot Crate. Do you have experience with Loot Crate? Have you ever tried it? Do you know anybody who has? You hear any negative points? Or
No, I mean, to kind of put it into like blunt terms, it's basically just you sign up for a monthly subscription, and I'm sure there's going to be a nerd on the internet out there who argues with me on this exact point. But it's basically you get a box in the mail, and you open it up, and it could be like a Mario plush and Final Fantasy stickers and a Doctor Who keychain and, a Gears of War action figure. And it's just like, that's what you get for that week. And then the next week or the next month or whatever, you get something completely different. It could be like a Star Wars playing cards. And, it's just like every week there's just something different that you get, but you have no control over what it is. But it could just be really, really cool stuff. And there's, like the rare things that you can get that people like, and there's the whole, unboxing scene that's with it too. Like, I just got my Loot Crate. Let me just open it up, and I'm gonna show it all on YouTube as to what I pull out of my mystery box. And there's that kind of element to it. And I think with more of some of the curated clothing lines, it's, you kind of tell them, and I'm assuming that this is more what the Black Box record is more, here's my taste, and show me something or give me things that I might like, which I think I could see a positive and a negative to this, which is kind of you might get exposed to something that you wouldn't normally be exposed to. Somebody who's like, I really like Daft Punk, but here's this other band that you actually haven't even heard of that was either influenced by them or helped influence them or is, Daft Punk adjacent. And now you're just like, oh, now I've got this whole rabbit hole that I can go down with this band. But the other problem with that is that you get too confined to a sound, and you can kind of get in your own echo chamber of not really diversifying what you're listening to. Because I think of when you're posting stuff on Instagram of like, hey, I went to the thrift store and I found, this Bread album. And you're just like, who finds these things and who listens to Bread anymore?
Well, and to your Daft Punk analogy, if you're going to the record store, obviously if you're a fan of Daft Punk and the ever coveted bin diving for actual records as opposed to the Mario plushes or the Doctor Who stickers or whatever it may be, when you go to a record store, there's a meditative quality about bin diving that is arguably in some circles probably as coveted as the records themselves. I mean, there's something to be said about that, and you're eliminating that bin diving with this. But if you go to the record store looking for Daft Punk, you may be at a loss until you go up and you talk to that person behind the counter and you say, hey, I really like this, what would you recommend for me? And in a lot of record stores, they will say, hey, here's an idea, here's something that we've gotten really good feedback on, or this album was just released by these guys, or I like this. The rare occasion they just look at you and go, Daft Punk, have you even heard of Magic Sword? Get out of my store. But it's that concept of the rabbit hole, I think, that makes this more appealing in a way, because with Black Box Record Club, it's the curation of the coveted colored vinyls, which are becoming trend again, limited releases, the ever coveted record store day exclusives, which by the time most people wake up and go to the record store on record store day, they don't even get their hands on. But all these kind of things are the things that they bring to try and curate new tastes and sounds for each individual. I personally, the more I look into this and the more that I read on it, I haven't dove into it yet myself. If I do, I'll certainly report back to everybody and let them know what my thoughts are as being a member of a Record of the Month club is, the ups and the downs, I'll be completely honest, but I see it as just a supplement to the love of music. I don't really see a drawback here, especially if you get a record that you already have, that you may have bought years ago at a record store, they'll replace it for free. That's very tempting. I don't see a drawback. Do you see a drawback to what this could be?
No, I don't. I think, like anything, you just kind of have to take it as this isn't going to replace everything that you need. Like it's not filling all of the voids that come from your experience at a record store. It's just a different outlet to getting those things. And I think that's the important element of all of this, is that it's a new way to experience music. People who are going to sign up for a record of the month club are still going to go crate diving and still go discover random blues artists, even though their favorite thing is, Italian techno. People are going to try to broaden their experience through normal crate diving for, like, look at this record that I only found for 75 cents. This is a steal.
Italian techno blues.
It's
Think
out there.
about that for a minute. Okay, if anybody's listening and they have Italian techno blues, please send whatever you find or have or recommend to info@nanobotrock.com. I want to hear it. But in speaking of the plethora of music and the inability to find it all, it's something to help fill a small portion, not the overall whole. A Record of the Month Club is not going to give you jumbo packs of toilet paper when they're all out of the store. It doesn't fill the overall need, but it may fill your music need, which is why we are here, which is why we do this weekly, is because we want to give you a little bit of a semblance of music that you may like and what might be out there for your taste that you may not have heard of before.
We want to fill a little bit of your soul with just a tiny, tiny taste of music.
But not while being referred to as audio toilet paper. Please disassociate Nanobot Rock with audio toilet paper, because they are not meant to be one and the same. With that, he's going to kill me for this. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the March Divide. The March Divide, Jared Putnam of El Paso, Texas, has been making music for a very long time. He has a lot of music that's out there. He most recently released September Blues on April 3rd, and I was fortunate enough to catch up with Mr. Putnam in February of 2019. He made a trip here to Boise, Idaho, and we sat down at High Note Cafe where he was performing. It's this cool little cafe, very intimate setting, perfect for lone guitarist. And that's what Jared Putnam is when he hits the road. He's a single guitarist, a singer-songwriter up there. But his roots are based in this punk origins. He started out in this kind of heavier punk sound, and you can see that in the way that he carries himself and everything. Genuinely great guy, very, very down to earth, really awesome to sit down and have a beer with and catch up with and get to know him. But when he did the March Divide, as he's transitioned away from those origins of the punk kind of sound, he took that post-punk acoustic style, went by the moniker March Divide, and he's been releasing a lot of music since. September Blues is a poppy stomp clap foundation that rides that traditional post-punk acoustic style that Putnam's made for himself over the years, but he blends it beautifully with this grooving bass lick that carries throughout. And I would normally be the one to say, okay, the stomp clap crap has to stop. It's not a full-on stomp clap.
No, you own it. You own it. It's stomp crap.
It is stomp crap, but he doesn't, it's not full stomp. There's a clap, but the in your head stomp. But the grooving bass lick on this, I think, is what really catches my ear and really makes me want to listen to September Blues on repeat.
I made it home on a Sunday afternoon. You said, get your shit, 'cause it's time for you to move on. Blindsided and caught off guard, I started to gather my things to take them to the car. And I asked, what the fuck did I even do? You said, well, I met someone, I've been messing around on you. Oh, well, I must admit I didn't have a clue. But don't feel bad, babe, 'cause I've been doing the same to you. And as I left, it started to...
I'm going to derail this for a moment, because I just want to say, this is our April mixtape. You have a band called The March Divide and a song called September Blues. Why are you trying to do your own thing here? Why are you trying to just mess with the months like that?
I'm a rebel, Dottie. But to his point, the song even sings, I think I called them September Blues, but carried through October, November, December 2.
Yep. He does have a calendar. I will give him that. But so derail aside here, I have to say that I agree with you 100% when it comes to some of those little things that you're talking about. Like when you mentioned that bass line, I was like, yeah, that just, it's really subtle. But when you get in there, you're like, he's got a really cool little bass riff going around in the background.
I think I called them September blues, but it carried through October, November, December too. And I can't remember when the drought came, but ever since I've been with you, it's been driving me insane. So what the hell am I supposed to do? You said, well, I don't care, babe, 'cause I want nothing to do with you.
The bass was played by his friend Ernie Garcia, who, as he points out, he was supposed to be sleeping on his couch when this song was released, but the tour was canceled, and Jared tours a ridiculous amount. The guy works super hard. The song itself is about a bad breakup.
Well, I would say it's not even just about a bad breakup. I mean, the thing about the way that he talks about every single lyric in the song, I mean, this was a doomed relationship from the beginning. Like when he talks about getting kicked out of the house or the place or wherever they were, and it's just like he's like, well, what happened? And there's this great line about, well, I met someone and I've been messing around on you, and going back to those little things, like he has a really interesting choice, which is because in music, you've got that kind of like there's a lot of O's and oohs in music, but the way that he has his O at the end of that almost just sounds like oh, like kind of like it hit him at that moment, which was really kind of cool.
The what did I do? Oh.
Yeah. That one
My
right
bad.
there.
My bad. And what's interesting about this song is it develops on a character that we don't get from typical singer-songwriters in my mind. I think that the road-weary, traveling Jared Putnam adds a certain style of songwriter that, and I've mentioned it in past ideas and things that I've written on this, but it really does strike me as kind of that sense that you got with Bob Seger back in the day, that he's out on this road and he's, you hear it in Turn the Page arguably most with Bob Seger, but it's just this is what life is like out there on the road kind of thing. And he's kind of in his own head. And I will stress that I do know Jared, and he's happily married. He's a father. This is not about a breakup that he's having at this moment kind of thing. I hope, Jared, just don't. But he's
Jared,
writing
if you're
about
having this problem, please email us at info@nanobotrock.com.
If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with mesothelioma, I've been staying at home too much lately. Let me out. But Jared, he's able to tap into this really genuine sense of honesty that I think is just it's captivating to me.
Yeah, I go back to the whole idea with the doomed relationship, and he does this great job of creating flawed characters in this story that he's set up, because he just talks about, I mean, it's simple to say, well, this girl was cheating on him, so that's why they broke up, and it's like, well, no, turns out I was also messing around on you too, and as I'm leaving this house, like, I feel calm. And there's just all these different character layers to the song, which make it really cool.
And it's never your fault, right? It's always the other person's fault. But if they're both at fault, then they both just kind of go, yeah. But he also sings to this idea of that idea. He sings to this idea that idea. I am a wordsmith right now, and a rebel, Dottie. But he sings to this thought that everything is okay, but he's still kind of lingering on this, back to the point of, I think I called them September blues, but it carried through October, November, December too, is that neither of us were happy, but kind of miss you. It's still kind of eating at me in a sense. And I think that is just, it's another level to that character development that he's created that you pointed out. I think that that's a spot on take on this. I think that he's just developed on that, and it's turns into this great acoustic sound.
So glide pathing out of September Blues, we're going to take things into a much darker tone here with the next band, Toner. The song is Dark Ecstasy off their new album Silk Road, which will be out on April 17th. This track was really kind of, I'll say it was an interesting choice, but the way that it kind of kicks off, there's kind of, and I don't know if you got this at all, but there's almost the intro riff to the song. Like I was listening to this, I'm like, this almost sounds like the Editors. And then like the more that went into it, I'm like, no, this is not the Editors, because it kind of gets into that really, fuzzy, dirty, grungy kind of bedroom rock sound that Samuelito Cruz created with Toner. And there's just a ton of heavy distorted guitars. And then, he's got the vocals just way back in the mix so that you almost can't even hear them, but it's very just really guitar driven.
It is. And would you say that the Toner is dark?
It is a dark Toner that you can buy at any Office Depot.
Looking at you, Staples. No, Toner, okay. I'm going to get real for a minute on this because we've been doing this for nearly 10 years now with Nanobot Rock. The existence of Nanobot Rock, not the mixtape. Don't go looking for 10 years worth of mixtape because this is still relatively short in its lifespan comparative to all of the reviews and everything else that we've been doing over the years. But we've always tried to push ourselves a little bit, take that chance on something that isn't in our wheelhouse. We were talking about kind of that rabbit hole of discovery of the Daft Punk, and you can kind of launch into something that you didn't know was even out there, and then all of a sudden you can find that you're a big fan of the sound. So with this track, and arguably the next track we're going to talk about too, in my eyes, they were two chances. There's stuff that is, I would say, off the beaten path of my normalcy, and I've got a pretty wide range of normalcy. However, as you pointed out, Dark Ecstasy by Toner is almost concussively unrelenting. It's just grinding and grinding and grinding. As you pointed out, it's the grinding opening drowns the lyrics deep in the track. It almost feels to me like a Lost Pixies track. Like it feels like it could have come from the B-side of Surfer Rosa. It's just got this grinding overhaul to this.
Like Frank Black just had too much coffee and got into the studio to really just get some anger out.
Right, like turn up the overdrive on the pedal and just go with a whole bunch of downstrokes and just this fuzzed out chord that's overridden blistering sonic wave of sound that ultimately comes out in Dark Ecstasy. So to me, this was definitely off the beaten path. But the more I listened to it, and not necessarily because of that kind of Pixies relation that I'm making in my own head, but in its own right, I started to get drawn to this song more and more by it, even as it went. And it's a short song for what it's worth.
Yeah, and the track really kind of has some interesting movements in it where like you just talk about just that like concussive wall of sound and then but then like there'll just be like this squealing guitar that comes over it and you just think, well, that's just going to completely overpower it, but it ends up just kind of adding just this really cool extra layer on top of all the music to bridge you to the next piece of it.
And again, though, it's this short attack of a sound that comes at you and comes at you and comes at you. I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Silk Road, which this is off of the 10-track album. The 10-track album itself comes in at about 20 minutes.
I think it's under.
10 tracks, about under 20 minutes. Okay. So only three of the tracks.
All right, hold on. Let me get my calculator out. So if you've got 20 tracks.
3, 4.
Oh no! They don't carry. They don't do carrying in school anymore. There's dots and lines and squares.
Hold your hands up so I can count your fingers too. Is
Okay.
there a Common Core finger count here that we could do? But only three of these tracks on this 10-track album are over 2 minutes. This being one of them.
The thing about this song is, yeah, it comes in at 2:40 maybe, and you get to the end of the song and they just cut into this really, really heavy riff and you're like, oh, this is all going to pay off right now. And then it just stops and you're just like, but that just more. And so like this almost like they hook you in by just kind of like, I'm just going to pull a little bit away from you before you get, the full taste.
Oh, you almost had it. Oh, you almost had it. Oh, it is. And it builds on that. And it's this tempting, like, okay, here we go. Oh, it's a Jared Putnam. Oh, moment. It's a March Divide. Oh.
Continuing with our fuzzy sound, we also got a great track by Peel Dream Magazine called Emotional Devotion Creator. It is off their new album Agitprop Alterna, which came out on April 3rd. So this is the creation of Joe Stevens from New York City, and where the last track was just that sonic wave of concussive beats that Greg mentioned, this one is definitely a lot more shoegazy, late, kind of that, late indie pop fuzzy sound. There you go. Now it's my turn to be the wordsmith. We're good at this.
Excellent wordsmithery, sir. The Joe Stevens Peel Dream Magazine, the Emotional Devotion Creator, and I understand that the concept with this album is that each track is supposed to fit this unique character that feeds into this broader thematic whole for the album. And specifically Emotional Devotion Creator is meant to frame this thought on advertising and the cynical, as they put it, the cynical manufactured emotional response it elicits, but with a critical eye. It, to me, feels like when people are trying to do something different, they intentionally set out with, I'm going to do something fresh and different, and I'm going to have this artistic vision, and they say, to hell with traditional constructs. It kind of fits what we get from Peel Dream Magazine to me.
Well, and it also kind of feels like you remember the old days of Limewire when you would download a track and you'd be listening to it and you're just like, wait, they said this was down with a stick disc by Disturbed, but it's just the same chorus verse on loop for the duration of the song, and then it fades out. Like, they tricked me. But like listening to this track, I just caught a lot of that loop. But then I went back and listened to it again and listened to it with better headphones. And I kind of classified this as this is my you need to listen to this with good headphones type of track, because as much as there's kind of that, it kind of gets in that circular reference on a lot of its music, like there's just all this great underlying variation in it. Like in the beginning when the vocals are coming in, like they just, and the guitars kind of, playing really low key, and then they just layer another group of vocals on top of it. It just creates this really, really cool audio parfait.
And the purpose of the LP, as far as sound is concerned, was to pay homage to that fuzzy mod pop style that you get with maybe My Bloody Valentine, as they pointed out, or early Stereolab, as they had put it. And
yeah, it's basically those bands had better producers, or better production value, I should say. Better producers.
Now we're just taking stabs at producers around here. Yeah, so they're the man behind the board or woman behind the board.
Well, the technology in 1992 is different than 2020. So that's not to say that whoever produced My Bloody Valentine in 1989 didn't know their stuff, but you're kind of limited with your clicks and whistles.
Well, and you're also limited with Limewire. Did you know that Steve Miller wrote Bohemian Rhapsody? I didn't until I had Limewire. But as you pointed out, this Emotional Devotion creator is this layered dark pop shoegaze, and it does exist in this post-rock sound of the 90s. It fits in this, like, well, whatever happened to that late 80s, 90s kind of sound of that post-rock? What did it fade into, or what did it dig itself into? Well, here you go. Emotional Devotion creator by Peel Dream Magazine. So we're going to take a right-hand turn, because that's what we do here a lot, is we play songs that, hey, it's starting to hit a theme, and we go, no, and we're going to go somewhere completely different. And Los Angeles-based, via East Coast, Norwegian-born singer-songwriter Sondre Lerche is on track to his 9th studio album. 9 studio albums is quite the undertaking. But we are going to be talking about You Are Not Who I Thought I Was, which just in title, as you're listening to the song, just look at the title. Just sit, listen, and read the title over and over again. And you start to come across this lyrical prowess and this writing that is pretty brilliant in my eyes. It's, as you start to hear it unfold, I think that there's a lot to this. And as he put it, the inspiration behind the theme and feeling of this album comes from a sense of space and time associated with ambient music and minimalism. Ever since his Pleasures album from 2017, sorry to complete the quote, I've been running a lot and I listen to mainly abstract music that helps me lose sense of time and structure when I run, what I refer to as patient music. Would you call this patient music, Clay?
Like music that you listen to if you want to be a more patient person, or if music that I listen to if I am in a psych ward and kind of like the phrase of my logic and sanity are, starting to wither away.
I think that there's something to be had in the phrase of your logic and sanity fading away, but I would go with the former rather than the latter on here. Okay.
Yeah, I could see that. And this is such a different sound than Pleasure was. Like, I mean, I'll admit I wasn't too keen on or too in the know of Sondre Lerche's oeuvre before listening to this song. So I went back and listened to Pleasure, and I'm just like, well, this is a complete departure from that. And, it's a lot bigger sound and it's a lot more, kind of rock heavy. And then you listen to this and you've got like a song that opens with basically a blues rock riff and then yacht rock strings. And it's just like, okay, that's going to take a different direction than I thought. But, it's a really kind of cool meshing together. And then back to what you said about the kind of the conceit of the whole song. Like you listen through it once and you're just like, oh, okay, well, this is a guy that's just kind of talking about ending a relationship, and like you think about it and you're like, oh, it's a kind of clever twist on the whole idea around that you try to be someone else at the start of a relationship, and then as you kind of go away into the relationship that you see somebody, you see that person differently, but you're also seeing yourself differently. But as you listen to the song more and more, and some of the lines that he has about like just basically watching this guy put on his shoes and walk out the door.
Whose are the feet tiptoeing across the floor, taking off his shirt and pants, sliding underneath the sheets, laying down the law of what dreams can be dreamed. I'm sound asleep while you're sleeping with him. You are not who I thought. You are not who I thought I was when I met you. So who am I to you now? Who am I now that I cannot forget you?
These ideas are just that it's almost like he's talking about himself more than he is talking about the other person in the relationship.
And he did point out that this is meant to be a sense of a quest for serenity. To me, when I first started listening to this, and probably second or third go through this song, as you start to peel back the layers and kind of understand the meaning of this all, I couldn't shake this sense of Sondre Lerche being kind of like Dan Wilson dropping down a T-Rex rabbit hole after a heavy dose of Andrew Bird. There's this lyrical prowess that's there that really gets your mind working, but there's that kind of early glam rock style of T-Rex beat that lies in this. But then vocally he comes across kind of like Dan Wilson. I mean, if you listen to the deep track semisonic stuff, you start to get this honesty out of his voice. So you put those three together and you get Sondre Lerche. You are not who I thought I was. Maybe he's not who he thought he was, because he's really Dan Wilson down a T-Rex rabbit hole after listening. And I've got a whole thing mapped out on my wall right here with red strings, a la Charlie Day, conspiracy theory, man. But yes, this evolves, and the more you listen to this song, the more the story unfolds, and it's almost as if you listen to this on repeat, it's almost as if you're watching the same show, but it's a different episode, and the characters are developing all within itself, which I thought was really cool.
Well, and the video also does a really good job of kind of illustrating this out even more if you've watched that, because he's this whole video of him like walking in the woods, and then he's digging a hole, and then it's basically himself watching himself digging the hole, and then there's another character watching himself that's watching himself that's watching himself, and it all just kind of like, it's like Ukrainian nesting doll of Sondre Lerche. Take that, yarn wall art.
I'm just thinking back to when Cello Joe was doing the Tree Fort brunch at Bitter Creek Ale House, and he was playing live, walking around with his cell phone, streaming it live, while everyone else was streaming it live. So it became this whole super like
we're in the Matrix now
moment. What? So yes, yes, Sondre Lerche's "You Are Not Who I Thought I Was." Go check it out. So to wrap up our mixtape here, it's going to get a little weird in all the right ways. Don't give me that look. Oh, dig yourself out of this one, Greg. I see what you're doing.
Well, any conversation is going great when you say, it's going to get weird.
Well, it's going to get weird because when I say Soft Plastics, Rope Off the Tigers, I'm not talking about Joe Exotic here. I'm talking about Soft Plastics, which is the newest musical incarnation of Carrie Mercer, former songwriter and member of Frog Eyes. Rope Off the Tigers, the latest single, is part of this 10-track post-punk, new wave mariachi, dub, hip-hop, goth rock, infused romp.
With Andrew Bird.
Andrew Bird. All
and
rung
T-Rex.
through and T-Rex, all rung through the grime of a northern port city. Those are not my words. It's their words to explain the sound. But to me, you had mentioned editors earlier, and if we were to pick one of these 5 songs that had an editor's nod, this is it to me. Tom Smith of the Editors, produced by mid-career David Bowie, gets you Rope Off the Tigers in my book.
Rope off the tigers, they'll spill the tea. They're roaring upset, geniality. Bodish the weight staff, my breath the breeze. Turn your face to
That is quite the visual, I'll have to say.
It's got these dark drawing vocals that balance somewhere in the whimsical, burned out realm of Ziggy Stardust, but it's captivating like what the Gorillaz have become.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I mean, because you listen to this track and it's super heady. Like, I mean, out of everything that we've covered on this, like, you know, I talk about in previous episodes having a song that you listen to and you kind of play it over and over again, and then it's like something gets stuck in your brain and you're just like, well, now the song's on repeat in my head and I can't get it out. But this song is less about having it stuck in my head because of some kind of crazy hook, but I just think about the song. Not like because there's some kind of like weird narrative going on in it, but just like all the things that they add into it. I think because you mentioned the mariachi piece to this, because this is not like a mariachi sound. This is, I don't even know what you want to call this type of music, but then they throw a mariachi trumpet in there and you're like, oh, okay, well, that was an interesting choice, but it layers on perfectly. So good on you.
And it does. It's kind of that thought that I had previously, but it's of this, we're going to go against the construct and to hell with that. We're going to do what we want. It formulates as kind of this late 70s experimentation with the way that it's thrown together to me, which I guess is why I made the Bowie Ziggy Stardust association. But it's packed with those splashes of horns and electrified bass that adds this vintage quality, but it's seriously somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, but you will find something new each time you listen to this.
Well, and because they throw in the ride cymbal, and it's just like whenever it's done right, like the ride cymbal is just so perfect. And the way that they just throw it in on the chorus or the pre-chorus or whatever structure it is of that part of the song, it just adds that extra layer on it.
And adding layers is what this song is really good at. And that ride is on point. Ultimately, it becomes this prophetic post-punk UK draw. When you think of what the next sound that's going to come out of the music is going to be, for a long time when you look at the English Revolution, or the British Revolution, excuse me, we're not talking about history here, we're going to talk about music.
The Redcoats are coming.
The Redcoats are coming. All our love to our UK listeners and friends.
Rope off the Redcoats.
Rope or like ska, how it jumped from Jamaica to the UK before it came to the US. Every time you want to see where the vein of music is going, keep close tabs on the UK, because this is kind of where that's coming. The post-punk sound, this could definitely be the beginning of something fantastic. And the new album, 5 Dreams, 10 tracks of that. Again, I'll read it one more time. The post-punk, new wave mariachi, dub, hip-hop, goth rock, infused romp, all rung through the grime of a northern port city.
And then maybe throw a little bit of lounge crooner in there, too, while you're at it.
A little Richard Cheese lounge crooner?
No, like legitimate lounge crooner.
Legitimate lounge crooner. So basically what we're saying here is Rope Off the Tigers, Soft Plastics, Daryl Smith is a walk down the strip in Las Vegas, right?
If it were taken over by a jungle at the same time. And I don't even mean like with the Tigers. I mean, I just see a lot of dense foliage with this track.
So the Las Vegas strip, a la Planet of the Apes, Rope Off the Tigers, Soft Plastics.
Damn dirty apes.
Damn dirty apes. So of all the 5 tracks we've listened to today and talked about, hope you found something that you like, something that you want to dive into a little bit more. Like we talked about, don't be afraid to take those chances. Let us know if anybody's had any experiences on the Record of the Month Club. Very much interested to know that, or any of those loot boxes or whatever you have. Love to know what your thoughts are. Good or bad, let us know. But thank you for hanging out with us today and listening to us.
Yeah, and you can find all of these tracks on our mixtape, which will be on Spotify. We'll have a link in the show notes. And as always, you can find us at nanobotrock.com. Email us at info@nanobotrock.com with any suggestions, thoughts, ideas, unboxing videos of Loot Crate, whatever it is that you have for us.
Keep listening to local and independent music. Keep supporting local and independent music. And thank you for listening to Nanobot Rock Mixtape. Until next time.
Damn dirty apes!